Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of the suffering servant passage in Isaiah chapters 40 through 56, verse 6, in which we are told about the coming Messiah, who he will be, what God will achieve through him. And we begin in chapter 40 with all these familiar lines of scripture that we know: comfort my people, a voice calling in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord. Our life is like grass; it withers away. But then we also, last time, after the word of comfort is delivered and the coming of the Messiah is announced, we had the call for God's people, for the Jews, the inhabitants of Jerusalem on Mount Zion, to get up on the highest mountain and to tell everybody, here is your God. He has come with reward and recompense, and he is going to be a very tender shepherd for his people. And so we have the good news announced. Here is your God, and we've told something about God. The God who comes to us, the Messiah who comes to us, will be the good shepherd, and he will gather his lambs in his arms, and he will tenderly lead the nursing ewes. Now, since we've been given this intimate picture of how closely God will hold us to his heart, we need to be reminded of the God we're talking about. And so, from chapter 40, verse 12, all the way through chapter 41, verse 7, we have perhaps the greatest meditation, declaration of God's otherness in Scripture, or at least the greatest sustained declaration of God's greatness and otherness. And we'll take a few days to look through this. We're going to learn a lot, not just about God, but about the universe he created. There'll be a detail in this, not today's text, but there will be a detail in this longer passage about the universe that we didn't even understand until 15, 20 years ago. But there it is in the text of Scripture. Today we're going to look at chapter 40, verses 12 through 17. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens by the span, and calculated the dust of the earth by measure, and weighed the mountains in a balance, and the hills in a pair of scales? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or as his counselor has informed him? And who did he consult, and who gave him understanding? And who taught him the path of justice, and taught him knowledge, and informed him in the way of understanding? Behold, the nations are like a drop from a bucket. Yes, that's where that phrase originates. Are like a drop from a bucket, and are regarded as a speck of dust on the scales. Behold, he lifts up the islands like fine dust. Even Lebanon is not enough to burn, nor its beasts enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are regarded by him as less than nothing. God's omnipotence, his omniscience, and his enormous size is declared in this introductory section of this longer section about God's greatness. So we start out with God's bigness. You know, he can hold all the oceans in the hollow of his hand. A span is the measurement that you can make with the width of your hand when you spread your fingers. And he describes God measuring our universe 13 billion light years across like this, to measuring out the size of it. God is bigger than our universe. He's beyond our universe. God, no one teaches God anything. No one instructs God in what it means to be good. Goodness is defined by who he is. He has all knowledge, and he, in his own person, just by his nature, determines what is good and what is evil. As we are listening here, did you hear echoes of another passage, another older passage, a passage that Isaiah clearly was familiar with? Of course, it's the theophany in the book of Job, God himself speaking at the end of the book of Job. Who is this, that tries to offer counsel to me and tell me what to do? Were you there? Whenever I created the universe? Do you know? Do you know this? Who is this? He's very much evoking that moment in at the end of the book of Job, the theophany at the end of the book of Job, where Job, still on his ash heap, still scraping his running sores with potsherds, still having lost everything in his life, including his children, um, is repentant and humbles himself before God without any explanation whatsoever. He never gets any explanation for what has happened to him. And he bows before God anyway because of God's greatness, and he repents. And Isaiah follows this moment where we can picture ourselves being carried as a little lamb by God next to his heart, by God's Messiah, who is also God. He follows this by telling us this is the person who's carrying you. He's this big. And so these verses are introductory to this longer section, which goes all the way through the first 7 verses of the next chapter. We're going to pick up with verse 18 then next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.